Welcome everybody to, I'm not sure how many annual meetings we've had, maybe about 20, but welcome to our 2026 annual meeting. Both members, non-members, Orient Association welcomes you. Hope you'll have an informative morning and learn a little bit about water in the Orient area, and also a little bit more about Orient Association and what we've been up to for the past year, and hopefully what we're going to be up to for the coming year. I don't want to delay too long, so we have two great speakers this morning, but I'm going to let Barbara Friedman, our Vice President, introduce them. Here you go, Barbara.
All right. Maybe some of you were here in October for our water forum in October. These were two of our guests, and they came back for a repeat performance. Well, another performance. First up will be Jason Hime, the Principal Public Health Engineer and the Chief of the Office of Water Resources at Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and Joe Finora, who is the town engineer of the town of Shelter Island and also a Southold town trustee, and has kids at the Oyster Pond School in the pre-K. So why don't you start, Jason?
Thanks, Mark. How you doing, everybody? Jason Hime, and I'm so happy to be out here. I got a lot of connections, even though I'm not from Suffolk County, I'm not from Long Island, I'm from upstate New York. I still have a lot of connections out here. My family and I have 3 young children as well, and we like to go out to Orient Point, do the hike out there. We used to go to the Candy Man. I'm so sad that it's closed today. Oh man, so they're no longer? Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Yeah, and I used to go fishing out here with one of my unfortunately late friends out in Plum Gut, but Great area, great drive out. I'm from Manorville, so it was a nice drive this morning. Luckily, no traffic yet. I think that's in the fall, right? All right, so if you were here in October, this is going to be an update from that presentation, a little bit more condensed, just in the interest of time. We're going to be talking about some of the private well survey work, and we're going to talk about general private well water quality for all of the private wells, including the surveys initially. Then we'll get into each of the individual recent surveys that we've been doing for private wells out in Orient. And then I'm going to give you a little heads up about an expansion that's going to be coming. We're going to be doing some outreach in one of these surveys pretty soon to some additional homes, I think 40 additional homes, based on some of the detections that we've seen so far. Can everybody hear me okay? I want to make sure I'm not, yeah, good. And then we'll talk about, I abbreviate things. I'm an engineer, as is Joe. So I love, acronyms. So NCOM, that's short for non-community. That's our non-community public water supply system. So we do have several local businesses and things that have their own supply wells, and we regulate them. We regulate them similar to how we would regulate like a big supply like Suffolk County Water Authority. The requirements are a little bit less for them, but still we're out there inspecting them, sampling them every year. And then we do have the Suffolk County Water Authority Browns Hills well field out here in Orient. I figured I'd share some of the water quality from our 2025 testing of that facility. And then, Barbara asked me if we could speak a little bit about groundwater aquifer protection, and Stuart, I think, carrying across some of the thoughts and information that was shared during the last presentation in October, and I think the great work that CDM did on the report for y'all. Okay, so our general Orient private well water quality, this is one of our sample collectors out there. That's Elena Zanzaroff. Some of you that may have had your wells sampled, she may have been the one that came out and did some of the sampling. Just in general, our private well sampling program, for those of you that don't know, if you would like to be tested, if you have a private well, you're probably from Orient, you all have private wells, unless you live in Browns Hills. So if you'd like to be tested, it's you can call our office, Office of Water Resources, 631-852-5810. You can submit the application to our office via fax, via email. There's actually a way that you can go on to our eHIMS environmental health information management system, sign up, get an account, and you can fill it out electronically and pay by credit card. So several different ways that you can actually sign up to do the private well test. The charge is still right now a $100 fee to do that testing, unless you're in one of our survey areas, and then it's free. Okay. For those of you that haven't been sampled yet, just to let you know, you can't collect the sample yourself and bring in water. We have had people ask us that question. We actually have trained public health sanitarians that have to collect the samples in accordance with the environmental laboratory protection protocols. And then Suffolk County, we have our own laboratory analyzing all of our samples for the drinking water samples, and they have developed the capability to do, not only bacteria, metals, nitrates, and volatile organic compounds like gasoline related compounds and chlorinated solvents, but also the emerging contaminants like 1,4-dioxane and PFAS. So our sanitarians will call you usually on a Friday and set up the appointment for the following week after we receive your application and check. Okay, where applicable. All right. So then the typical questions that we get are, well, what happens after you collect the samples? Honestly, our turnaround time for analytical results, is around 2 to 3 months right now, but that can vary depending on how many total samples that we get in. It's okay. So oh, is it getting feedback? Is it me actually talking? Oh, okay. So we, once we get the test results back, our laboratory is going to let us know if there's any problems in the samples as the results are available. So the bacteria sample results, usually they come in a day or two after we collect the samples. We're going to call you up and we're going to advise you of those results right away. The nitrates, they also typically come in early. But as soon as the whole package is complete and ready, we're going to send you out a complete results letter, and we're going to speak to you and give you advice for any of the parameters that may be out of where they should be. Okay, anything that's out of spec. If there is PFOS or PFOA, some of the emerging contaminants that we talked about in the October session, if we have any of those detections, New York State does have a policy where they will be offering alternate water supply on a case-by-case basis. Some of the surveys, like the one around this area, near the Orient Harbor survey or Orient Fire Department vicinity, they did offer alternate water supply, and that could be anything from connecting to public water or maybe bottled water initially, or several of you probably were provided with a point of entry treatment device, something that we call a POET system. All right. One of the biggest things that we're concerned about with private wells is it's not something that you typically focus on, right? You're going about your daily lives. Maybe you have a landscaper that comes in to take care of the yard. And that upper picture that you can see on the right is when the landscaper may actually bump into that sanitary seal. And that sanitary seal is there for a very important purpose. It's to protect the sanitary quality of your drinking water source. So as soon as that is compromised, bacteria can get down into the well, and that can cause what we refer to as an acute public health hazard. Gastrointestinal distress, maybe nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, things like that. That could be a significant concern. So you should periodically be evaluating your private well and making sure there's not an issue like this. The other picture that you see there is something that's too low. Our standard is to have private wells at least 18 inches above grade. And that's to prevent any, buildup of rain or something like that, or, the landscaper can see it, hopefully not hit it. I see people protect their wells sometimes with a fake rock. Maybe they put rocks around the stick-ups. Anything like that to help protect it is good. So I wanted my staff to take a look at the last 10 years of data for all the Orient private wells. Over that time period, they advised me that we took samples from 378 different properties out within the Orient community. Of those, we saw 141 total coliform detections, but some of these were at the same well in that time period because many of you reach out to us, take advantage of our program every year. So some of them we have gone back out and maybe we got another total coliform positive. So we eliminated those. We found that actually 66 properties had total coliform detections, and that's an indicator organism of potential, issues. Not all of the coliform bacteria are harmful, but they shouldn't be in there. We shouldn't have coliform detections. So that's 17% of the total properties. There were 6 E. coli detections at 6 different properties. This includes the survey work, but we had 105 PFOA and detections at 79 different properties, or 21% of those tested in the last 10 years. And remember, we've only been incorporating PFAS as part of our normal regimen for the last few years. We haven't been routinely doing PFAS for this whole 10-year period, so that number could be higher. 101 had PFOS detections at 75 properties, or 20%. 86 had nitrate exceedances over the 10 part per million standard. That equated to about 11% of the properties. 49 iron exceedances, obviously an essential nutrient, essential to human health, as is manganese. But those were in excess of the drinking water standard, which means they could cause a potential health concern. Iron is a concern if you have a condition called hemochromatosis and your body doesn't shed the iron like a typical human being would, and that can cause some issues for you. Manganese can cause central nervous system impacts, and sometimes I'll see elevated manganese where we have chlorides, up above drinking water standards as well. Speaking of chlorides, we also had 17 chloride exceedances at 11 properties. That was 3% of the total population. And then there was also 16 lead exceedances at 15 properties that may have been associated with our staff when they come out. Many of you know, we get samples from before and after treatment. A lot of the pre-filtration samples are collected from the holding tank, and those taps aren't typically used. And a lot of times we will see a lead exceedance at that tap, but you're not normally consuming it, but it may be represented in the data set. Other things that we saw were the aldecarb breakdown products. Many of you that have been here for a good amount of time remember the Temic that was aldecarb that was used on the potatoes back in the day in the North Fork. TCPA, that was a breakdown product from Dactyl, another pesticide. Tetrahydrofuran and MEK. We see these a lot of time with the PVC well construction. So if you've had well work done and they've used primers or glues, we may see methyl ethyl ketone and tetrahydrofuran. And then cadmium and copper, turbidity and zinc. The turbidity is like essentially they use a light and they project it into the water sample, and it's a measure of how much that light scatters. So basically the impurities in the water that are causing the light to reflect or refract. All right. This is a picture. Many of you have this probably in your home, is the POET system. This is the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's point of entry treatment design. This is taken from one of their slides on their information. So you'd have your typical infrastructure over on the left, maybe a little booster pump, a pressure tank. It may go through a pre-filter, a little sediment filter, cartridge filter. And then the gray cylinders would be the granular activated carbon, which is effective at removing not only the PFOS, PFOA, but also pesticides and chlorinated solvents, gasoline-related compounds. You may also have a water softener for iron or manganese that may be in the water. And then the thin silver tube there is part of the New York State DEC's design. They usually have a UV filtration system, and that's to handle any bacteria that may be in the water supply system, either coming from the well or maybe growing on any of the media. So now we're going to get into the 4 Orient private well surveys. Nothing really new here from the Orient Harbor vicinity private well survey with the Holyoke vicinity add-on. Similar to what I presented back in October, similar exceedances, similar detections. We did reach out at Barbara's request. We wanted to reach out to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, because if I lived in this community, I would want to know, what's going on? What's going on? We know that Orient Fire Department was identified as a potential source. What's the status? Well, DEC has provided this information to us. They said that the PFAS contamination was detected across the site, the Orient Fire Department site. The highest concentrations were in an outdoor training area that had been used. That was up to 5,700 parts per trillion of PFAS and 181 parts per trillion of PFOA. Just for a frame of reference, the New York State drinking water standard is 10 parts per trillion, and the federal drinking water standard that's going to be applied to public water systems, it looks like now 2031, is 4 parts per trillion for each of these compounds. The PFAS contamination was detected in dry wells located underneath the firehouse, and the 191 private water supplies that were sampled by the county in this hamlet, 75 poets were put in the point of entry treatment, 3 pouts. That's a point of use treatment. That's something that the state, if there's not enough room to put a big granular activated carbon filtration system in, they'll put a little one right on the faucet, and they call that a pout, a point of use treatment. And then 7 locations are still receiving bottled water. DEC has indicated to us that the PFAS will be cleaned up.
I just have a quick question about that.
I'm not in charge, so I don't know. Can we do questions during or? Okay. All right. Next survey that we have, and this is the one that has the new information. So if you live out in this area, oh yeah, you can't see the road names. We talked about this a little bit, Barbara, in the preview, but I can just barely make it out where I'm standing. But you can see down at the bottom, this is Greenway East and Greenway West, and then Parkview Lane is in that yellow box in the middle. So if you live anywhere in that community or inside that yellow dashed line, we're going to be expanding the private well survey out to the dashed line probably in the next couple of weeks. So we're actually gearing up right now for the US Open, and we have another private well survey, that we're initiating right now under the orders of the county executive. But this one is next on the list. We're going to be doing our door-to-door outreach, mailing letters out to the community within that dashed line, anybody that hasn't been sampled yet. There is another Parkview Lane, I think, just east of here. So this was the one that's over near Greenway East and Greenway West. So in the original survey area that you saw, that yellow box with the solid line, we initially initiated that survey out in September 2024. We're going to be expanding that to include an additional 40 lots. The 12 private wells that were in the initial survey area, we sampled 9 of them. We either didn't hear from 3 or 3 denied our request for sampling. And then out of those, we had 2 that were over the New York State drinking water standards up to a combined concentration of 37 parts per trillion. And then we had 2 others that had detections below the MCL and 5 that had no detections. There were 2 wells that had detections in nitrate, which is also an acute public health hazard because of a condition called blue baby syndrome or methemoglobinemia. Nitrates are really a concern for children that are 6 months of age or younger. Most of us eat bacon and hot dogs and those things, but it's really a concern for young children and our bays. There's another survey, North Sea Drive vicinity. I think this is just a little east from the Greenway, east and west, and Parkview Lane. And this survey was initiated in October 2024, and it was recently expanded last month. We now have 43 private wells in this area, 24 of which have been sampled. 19 folks have either not responded or denied our request for sampling, or maybe they're just still pending sampling. Maybe they're not out there. It could be a seasonal home. We've had 7 detections above the New York State drinking water standards up to a combined concentration of 31.1. Remember, the drinking water standard is 10 right now with New York State. And we've had 9 detections below the MCL. 4 wells had no detections of PFOS or PFOA, and 3 are still pending analytical results at our public environmental health lab at the county. We also had 5 detections of iron above the drinking water standards, up to 2.58 part per million. Drinking water standard is 0.3. And one well had a detection of manganese above the MCL. It was 0.595, and similarly, the MCL is 0.3 parts per million. Another survey just going back west is Mulford Court. This is a new one. This was initiated in January of this year. 13 private wells were identified. 3 wells have been sampled so far, and 2 are pending sampling. We had 8 people that have not yet responded in the survey area or denied our request. Out of the 3 wells sampled, we have 2 that were over the drinking water standard up to a combined concentration of PFOS and PFOA of 41, and 1 well is still pending results. 1 well in this survey also had a nitrate maximum contaminant level exceedance. Again, the drinking water standard is 10. We had 12.9 parts per million. Right, our non-community public water suppliers, I drove by one on the way in. Actually, I think I drove by 2. Joe, I know you'll be really interested in this. The Oyster Ponds Elementary School, I know that's where your kids are at with pre-K. Oyster Ponds Elementary School, Cross Sound Ferry, Duryea's Orient Point, and the Orient Country Store, doing good. No maximum contaminant level exceedances in our 2025 analytical results. And I think so far this year too, everything looks good. Moonflower, one of the restaurants right up here, they installed granular activated carbon back in April of 2023. Water quality meets standards at the tap. But the raw water in our 2025 sampling, this is before treatment, they had PFOS at 290 parts per trillion and 13 parts per trillion of PFOA in the untreated water. Again, everything after the treatment below the drinking water standard. Orient Yacht Club, they also installed granular activated carbon treatment in August 2023. Their water quality also meets the drinking water standards at the tap. The PFOA that they had was 13 parts per trillion in their raw untreated water. Again, MCL is 10 in New York State right now. Orient Beach State Park, they are currently blending where possible, and they're also posted for manganese. So they had elevated detections of iron above the drinking water standard in their raw wells, one of their raw wells. They also have manganese above the drinking water standard in one of their wells above those standards. And unfortunately, they can't blend down to get the manganese below standards. And that is over the standards out at the taps. So they are posted for that. It's really a concern, more of a chronic health hazard. Lifetime exposure, 2 liters a day, 70-year lifetime, you know, going out there once in a while, less of a concern. Manganese is an essential nutrient, but they are still required to post under the code. Our Suffolk County Water Authority Browns Hills Community Water Supply. This is another one of our public health sanitarians, Dave Mullen. He oversees our community program. There are 3 active supply wells on this site. Last time I checked, it was 2A, number 4 and number 5. There are no maximum contaminant level exceedances at the pump station. The water quality meets the standards at the pump station and at the tap. However, there are detections out there in the raw water, and I wanted to share just a few examples of those, some of the things that I thought you might be of interest. They do have granular activated carbon centralized treatment at the pump station where they're pulling the water out of the ground. But they also, this is kind of a unique situation where many years ago, before my time, the health department allowed the water authority to install and maintain reverse osmosis filtration systems at the taps. The challenge of that is that now the water authority is responsible to get into each one of those taps and try to collect samples and maintain them. And you know what it's like scheduling with people that live out on the North Fork. So, so we did have detections of TCPA at 47 parts per billion. That's just below the maximum contaminant level of 50. But again, they have granular activated carbon installed to remove that dactyl degradate. They also had nitrate at 7.8, but the MCL is 10. Again, meet standards. But that's why the reverse osmosis systems were installed, was to handle nitrates. But nitrate concentrations have dropped a little bit in these wells right now, based on 2025 data. Bless you. Chlorides can go up to 39.5 part per million in the raw untreated water, and the MCL for those is 250 parts per million. So that's in good shape. based on our 2025 results. My last section here is on groundwater aquifer protection. What can we do, to protect our aquifer? You guys have seen probably something similar to this in the USGS presentation or probably in the CDM report. I think I borrowed this from CDM when we worked with them on our Suffolk County comp plan. In Suffolk County, you all probably know this already. We're drinking the water beneath our feet. It's coming from a groundwater aquifer. You don't know how many calls that we take every year and people think, oh, I'm drinking city water or it's the underground river. No, we're essentially doing indirect reuse. Anything that we put down our drains and that falls on the ground is either going into our bays or is getting up in our wells. So in Orient especially, the freshwater aquifer is extremely vulnerable and susceptible to contamination, as we know from the October presentation from USGS and CDM. We recommend, obviously, routine private well testing. The Suffolk County Health Department recommends annual testing at least for all of your wells, your private wells. We also encourage proper disposal of hazardous waste streams. I just reached out to Nick Krupski the other day. I have a relationship with him. I saw that he was a solid waste coordinator for the town of Southold, also a trustee, as is Joe. And he shared with me that, yes, they encourage folks to come out to their drop-off events. I think you can routinely bring motor oil out to their facility in Cutchogue, but they do have household hazardous waste drop-off events. And the next two that are coming up later this year are August 15th and November 21st. So if you have anything like old paint, bathroom cleaners, driveway sealer, mothballs, paint stripper, polishes, or other cleaners and preservatives, or any old pesticides, as long as it's household, waste, yes, you can. If you're commercial, if you operate a business or something like that out there, he encourages you to contact the town, speak to him and his team, and they'll provide additional information on where you can dispose of those things properly. Also limiting the use of non-essential fertilizers and pesticides, and always want to promote the use of safer alternatives where possible. We do have a great Cornell Cooperative Extension down here, and they provide great advice to folks, not only the farmers, but also I think residential homeowners. And I think Orient Association has additional guidance and advice on their website. Also want to encourage people to conserve water. Again, it's our sensitive, susceptible aquifer. We talked at Orient, October about saltwater upconing, where actually the saltwater can come up. Fresh water is less dense than the saltwater. So fresh water is sitting up on top of a big saltwater body. And the more we pump that fresh water, we can actually pull the saltwater interface up, even if we're in the middle of Orient, or if we're on the shoreline, we can actually pull that in from the shoreline, from the bay and the sound. All right, so there was a Southold law that was passed last year. It required smart controllers with rain sensors, odd even watering. If you don't know what that means, is that, my street address is 8. So it's an even number. So that means I would be allowed to irrigate on an even day if I lived in the town of Southold. So, the 2nd of the month, the 4th of the month, and so on. So that's a requirement from the town. And then there is a possible town irrigation ban for extreme drought periods. And they do have an enforcement, what's a regulation without enforcement? They have the ability to establish, levy fines against people for not complying. All right. Anybody that's interested in having their water sampled can reach out to us on the Office of Water Resources, 852-5810. And then, Barbara, do you want me to take questions down? You want me to hand it off to Joe?
Certainly, there's questions relevant to Jason's, subject matter.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
No, there's no exact answer to it. With the PFAS contamination, what's a reasonable expectation for all of us how long it will be until we're back down to normal levels? Is it 2 years or 10 years or 100 years? Like other communities that have had cleanups. What is that target time, more or less?
I think based on our experience, it's going to be years. These are forever chemicals, so they're not breaking down naturally very quickly. If at all in our aquifer. I think the last estimate that I saw was for the PFOS and PFOA. One of them was something like 70-year half-life. So that means if you have 100 parts per trillion, they estimate in 70 years it could get down to 50 parts per trillion. So without that mechanism, it's going to take, a cleanup. Obviously you want to get in there, you want to address the source of the contamination, and then, things will hopefully, go out and go into the bays or into the sounds and dilute, solution to pollution's dilution, unfortunately, with some things. But there are other mechanisms, and that's really up to the DEC working with the responsible party. So I really couldn't answer that question. You're welcome. Barbara, do you want to call on people? Sure.
When you went to certain areas, you said 15 had positive, 15 didn't have positive. Did you map that? And is there a stream? Is there a location of that stream moving down so that if you live 100 yards to the right, you're never going to get it? Or?
So we work with our hydrogeologists on my team to be able to identify what we refer to as a plume. And so we did that with the Orient Fire Department vicinity, the Orient Harbor vicinity survey area. So he would take some of the private well information, and in that case, we had detections in the thousands. So they did a groundwater investigation, and that's going to help supplement the private well data. The problem with private well data is that we don't always know what the well depth is. We don't know what the screen interval is. It's really not a good assessment of groundwater quality. It's important for public health protection. That's why we're out there doing it. But it's not really to help us necessarily identify the source. It's useful information, but it really needs to be supplemented with groundwater work. So if your well is, let's say, 50 feet deep, but your neighbor's well is 100 feet deep, there could be a thin layer of contamination coming through in a 5 or 10 foot segment, and it just hasn't stretched out enough yet to reach both intervals, both screen intervals. As it's traveling through the aquifer coming from the source. So that's a good question. Yep.
Give a little more information on that.
Sure.
As far as how's it get there and how
I laugh a little bit because not that it's funny, but on the side, I teach a water treatment plant operator course to people that work for the water districts. And, when I talk about E. coli, I try to get the students in the class to be able to remember, and I go, it's poop, it's poop. So it's warm-blooded animal feces. So this could be anything from a mouse climbing and falling down in your well. It could be a rabbit. It could be a deer. It could be your own waste stream. If your sanitary system or your neighbors is too close to your well, it could be coming from that. Exactly. Yeah. And that's a public health concern. That is a very serious public health concern. And, ingestion of these things can cause many different, issues. But if you see gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, chills, that would be something you want to reach out to a medical professional for sure.
Is there any contamination that happens as well in the samples that you're collecting and stuff?
Our sanitarians are, trained to be able to collect the proper samples. So our team, we're going to collect a representative sample. They're gloving up, so they're putting on nitrile gloves, and then they like to flame the tap. Fortunately, but unfortunately, the Reduction of Lead in Drinking Water Act of 2014, a lot of the manufacturers, these faucets, they switched over to plastic because they couldn't have the metal in contact because there was a certain amount of lead in the metal that made it easier to machine. So a lot of them lined it with plastic. So we've had to implement alcohol swabbing. I like to see both, and our sanitarians are trained that way. If it's not plastic, then we're flaming and alcohol swabbing to make sure that we're getting a water sample representative of the water coming from the well.
And as Jason said, in October, you need to make sure that they wash their clothes so that they don't have PFAS.
Yeah, one of the guidance early on that we received is, it was in textiles, it's in rugs, it's in, a bunch of different things Barbara has up here as examples. And yeah, so the advice that we received from the state when we went to go out and first start collecting these PFAS samples was you need to make sure that your staff that are collecting samples wash their clothes at least 7 times just to reduce that. And then we can't use Sharpies, there's various things, protocols that we have to follow to collect a proper sample.
By the way, New York State does have some rules about PFAS in clothing.
Correct.
Yes, they're phasing it out, and outdoor clothing is still allowed.
Severe weather clothing, yeah, snow pants and things like that. They're still allowing it, but right, yeah.
The Orient mosquito just 2 years ago we started helicopter around Halifax and Washington. Is there any evidence that affects groundwater? Do you have any idea that's getting heavy duties?
One of my teams is on a pesticide committee for the county, and he's our lead on pesticides. It's a good question. Barbara can provide you my contact information. I can follow up with you afterwards on that. I don't know offhand the chemical that they're spraying and if we're testing for it, so I wouldn't want to mislead you. So I don't have that answer today.
I wanted to know about the PFAS contaminants that are so popular at the moment. What happened to MTB?
MTB, we are actually still detecting it, and we are obviously still testing for it. And we just actually found it the other day, over twice the drinking water standard somewhere. It wouldn't be in Orient because it would have been part of my presentation. I don't recall where exactly it was. But yeah, for many of you that don't know, I kind of grew up with this. I remember going to the pump when I was a child. It was leaded gasoline and unleaded gasoline. And then they went over to the MTBE as the anti-knock agent. And then they phased that out around 2000. It was banned in New York State. But yeah, we saw it at a very high concentration out at one of our private well surveys in the Manorville Calverton area. I think it was hundreds of parts per billion. So yeah, it is still a potential concern. I don't know if it's old stockpiles of gas that people have or underground tanks that they, were storing and then they leaked, or yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. It was just still in the aquifer and hasn't broken down.
Should like to get started. And I just want to say that Orient and Shelter Island are the two areas in Jason's domain that keep him up at night. So we'll talk about Shelter Island next and the lessons that we can learn from Shelter Island.
Yes, can I just close your computer?
Yeah. I wanted us to have this up so everybody is aware that this new irrigation law does apply to us, even though we don't have Suffolk County Water Authority. Water applies to all of Southold.
Yeah, okay. Everybody can hear me all right? Hi, I'm back from October with Jason, so I guess we made it to the final round. There were 4 here in October and two here in the spring, so we made it to the end here. I'm Joe Finora. I'm the town engineer for Shelter Island. I grew up in Mattituck. I have 3 kids. We live in Southold, and 2 of my children are in the pre-K program here at Oyster Pond, so I make the drive over the causeway, and it helps start my day. I really appreciate seeing the open water there, and it puts me in a good mood. I think it's one of the better commutes around. But I'm here to talk to you today about some of the policies that we've implemented in Shelter Island. Similarly, Orient is a groundwater island. You're connected by a causeway, but your groundwater source is essentially isolated in the same way that Shelter Island is. And how you handle groundwater here is also very similar to Shelter Island. Very few people are on a connected public water system, and the majority of people are individually sourcing their water on their sites with private wells. Many of the folks in Orient are similarly situated near saltwater interfaces and low-lying elevation areas where saltwater intrusion is a risk. And they're also both very old areas where people have lived for several hundred years, and there's been decades, if not centuries, of agricultural history. And so you're dealing with similar legacy contamination issues from the historic uses. Shelter Island is about 90% served by private wells. Only about 10% are served water through a connected water public system. And they've been quite successful with helping to develop policy to reduce the risk of shoal water intrusion, but also some legacy nitrate issues that they've had. Namely, the big thing that I think sets them apart from other communities on the East End is that about 20 years ago, they passed legislation that actually banned all irrigation, all groundwater sourced irrigation. And so there are a few grandfathered systems now, but effectively across the entire island, with the exemption to agricultural purposes and nurseries. If you have a private residence, the permanently installed irrigation systems that you see around Southold town, where the sprinkler heads pop up, each morning, those are not permitted in Shelter Island. And if you want to do permanently installed irrigation, it has to be from off-island sourced water. And like a lot of legislation, nothing is perfect. When this was instituted about 20 years ago, the thought was, we'll give people a mechanism to irrigate if they so choose, but the idea that you would bring in water on a truck across a ferry and put it in a giant tank in the ground on your property, that was sort of silly. Nobody thought that that would be very popular. As of lately, the past 10 years, it's become more popular. The scale of construction and the budgets of some of these projects has just had folks interested in putting in those cisterns, and the idea of trucked in water has become more accepted from the consumer standpoint, but is very much not preferred by the community there. It's something that they're actively working on. They understand that relying on their neighbors to source groundwater to put in a truck and send across the ferry to Shelter Island is not the purpose of that legislation. And so I think you'll see some changes in the next couple of years about that. But that's sort of the loophole and the loose end of that irrigation legislation that was from 20 years ago. You're allowed to irrigate there by hand. Folks who water their gardens and things, that's not discouraged. It's actually encouraged. And I think over the past 2 decades, they've seen a really appropriate change in approach to landscaping. Sod installations are not so common there. And I think that type of legislation helps encourage more natural plantings and a culture of seeing brown lawns in July and August, as opposed to lush green turf like we see more commonly on the South Fork. Shelter Island also has a water advisory committee, which Southold Town has as well. They reactivated the Southold Town committee about a year or 2 ago, but the Shelter Island Water Advisory Committee is very active in town politics and town government. They have a number of water initiatives, one of which currently is working with Jason's team on a private well test campaign in the center of the island, where we have some legacy nitrate issues when we're trying to understand what other compounds or contaminants might be in the water there. But they're very actively engaged in water issues. It's part of the culture there, and I think that Southold Town has done a nice job at reestablishing their committee, and the irrigation policy in Southold Town is a direct result of that Southold committee's work. They developed a lot of these ideas and proposals, and they worked as a committee to make recommendations to the town board, which is how this legislation in Southold Town actually came to be. Another thing that Shelter Island has done is established what they call a near-shore overlay district. It's essentially a zoning overlay with the purpose of capturing properties around the periphery of the island, which are more prone to saltwater intrusion. And if your parcel is within that district, there are added regulations and zoning requirements to help minimize impact to your groundwater use. So policy things like the banning of ADUs. If you live in the near shore overlay district, they do not permit you to have an accessory dwelling unit on your property, with the idea that ADUs, while encouraged for some of their housing concerns, that's not an appropriate place to promote increased density to help reduce groundwater use and also reduce sewage contributions in those areas. There's other layered policies there, like requirements for lower amounts of impervious surface to encourage infiltration through drainage improvements. But the purpose is that this district has identified areas that are of higher risk, and they're acknowledging that different things need to be done there in terms of regulation and policy to help protect the groundwater zone in those areas. One thing that we do from my office that's not necessarily written in code, but we encourage the use of low flow well pumps. So Jason's code dictates that the minimum flow is five gallons per minute. And in terms of managing saltwater intrusion, one of the key pieces in terms of design is lowering the amount of draw over the short term. So if you can have a pump that extracts water slowly over a long period of time, rather than quickly over a short period of time, you can really minimize the impact of salt water moving in either laterally or coming up from below. So when we have wetland permits that come in for new homes, large homes near the water, particularly in that overlay district, we would work with the designer, and one of the recommendations that my department in the engineering department would recommend is that if they're considering 25 gallons per minute, we would say, we'd like to see 5 or 10 gallons per minute and double or triple the size of your storage tank so that you can meet the instantaneous demand. If 2 people are taking showers and you're running the dishwasher, you're drawing off that storage tank as a reservoir, and the low flow pump can work for longer at that slower rate. And we've had a lot of success with minimizing these short-term saltwater intrusion problems. For the past couple of years, we were seeing more and more instances in late August where folks along the shore had some sort of usually it was unintentional. They left a hose on, or they, it was a rental house and people came in, they used a ton of water all of a sudden, or left something running, and they would salt their well. And in most cases, it was from an abundance of use in a very short period of time. And so this type of approach has proven successful, I think, in helping to mitigate that. And it also forces a discussion about, water use and water system design in the construction phases and the planning phases, which I think helps cascade through the rest of the process when the project starts talking about landscaping and other water demands. One other thing that's part of the it's not actually part of the irrigation legislation, but it's similarly impactful, is that pool filling is not permitted to be done on Shelter Island from island-based groundwater. So if you build a new pool, you can top it off during the summer for losses from evaporation, treatment, and whatnot. But when you build a pool, or if you drain a pool, do work, the first fill has to come from an off-island source. And it's back to that same idea of minimizing the short-term shock of drawing a lot of water out of the ground at once. The pool is finished and you're all of a sudden in need for 10,000 gallons of water. People tend to go turn on their well pump. They run it for 2 or 3 days straight. There's a high risk of saltwater intrusion from that. Again, when that legislation was enacted, pools weren't so commonplace. So the idea of a truck coming over once a week wasn't so offensive, but that has become a little bit more common now with just about every new project, including a pool. And so that's something else that the town is looking at, how to manage. Pools have been identified as another, high water demand amenity, and managing them has become pretty tricky at scale. It's something that people seem to want. It's part of, being in an area where folks are visiting for the summertime for leisure and recreation, but it is something that we're looking at.
I noticed on occasion, here, not Orient, but further where you have this, I noticed it, like the water trucks go up, they go up 5,000, 10,000 gallons.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something the Southold Town Water Advisory Committee was very aware of. There've been a lot of complaints in Southold Town because of this issue. You know, when Southold Town was debating the local irrigation legislation of odd even watering, a lot of folks rightfully said, "Hey, I just can't believe that my town is saying I can water my lawn on Tuesday and Thursday this week, but right outside my house is a water truck filling up at the fire hydrant so that someone in Shelter Island can fill their pool up." And rightfully, I think they were upset about that. And Southold Town may have already initiated that ban of filling from hydrants. But it's something that both Southold and Shelter Island are very aware of and don't feel should continue.
I ask you to compare what you do as a town trustee, maybe some of the requirements at Shelter Island. Like, as a town trustee, do you ever ask people to put in a 5-gallon per minute pump instead of 25?
Right. Yeah. The simple answer to that is not really. The trustee's role is in administering wetland permits, and so it's very much related to construction projects. In plain English, in Southold Town, if you live within 100 feet of a wetland, you're subject to a trustee permit for any range of activities: building a house, putting in a dock. It could be freshwater or saltwater wetland. Yes, exactly. Yep. And so those projects typically don't have jurisdiction over things like the water system. That's actually falls under Jason's team's jurisdiction about setting the standards for how you construct a well and the setbacks between where the wells are relative to other wells and septic systems. So that's all within his jurisdiction. But as trustee, you know, they're trying to look at the whole picture of impact. You know, the key responsibility there is to make sure that this action, this project is in general minimizing the impact to our wetlands, our neighbors, and in keeping with the, you know, the character of the neighborhood and the culture of Southold Town.
Doesn't that slow volume well have a major effect on the shoreline?
A slow volume well?
Yeah, the pump.
Yeah.
The trustees have that 100 feet, and you're required to protect that for the town.
Yes.
So why wouldn't the trustees say we need that in order to protect and not have saltwater intrusion?
Yeah, you're totally right about that. It's something that we encourage, but I just try to drive home the point that we don't have jurisdiction over those sanitary requirements in Southold Town. That's something that comes from the health department. They have their sets of standards for construction. And
is that a sanitary effect? I mean, you can just limit the 5 gallons.
Yeah.
I don't understand how sanitary is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Jason has a better idea on how to.
Yeah, our private water system standards of the county require a minimum of 5 gallons per minute. We don't have a maximum. If you go over 45 gallons per minute on a lot, doesn't matter if it's one well or multiple wells, you're going to need a New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Long Island well permit. So that would be the upper threshold, is you'll need an additional review if the whole lot's consumption is over 45 gallons per minute. The DEC gets involved because they're concerned about saltwater intrusion as well.
But that's something that, you know, if you're interested in that, that's something that is going to be happening in the zoning update. To have, you know, an overlay, the regulatory overlay district with different regulations. So there is a meeting on, I forget, I think it's Thursday, talking about the zoning update. So
I just want I'm a best town trustee, so I'm involved in the half of the years, and you can make a recommendation, and I just highly suggest that any new building, anybody new program, you have a recommendation in the application that you recommend that this should be done. You have other recommendations, not that they're forced by law, but they educate the person. Most people would be happy not to get saltwater
Yeah, certainly. I totally agree with you. To that point, I would also say that most of the applications we receive in Southold town are not on private wells. It's a very small set of these applications, but I think that's a really good point to bring up, and I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
We got a question concerning 5-gallon possibility going to a 5-gallon well. That means you want to increase the amount of water you want to have instead of a 25 or 35-gallon tank, or to have a 40 or 50-gallon reservoir tank.
Yeah, you know, we've seen some projects where it's in the hundreds of gallons for storage tanks for some very large houses, and you know, it's not a catch-all solution. It's just I think a better approach, but it doesn't. It's not suitable for everyone. Jason will tell you, certainly, if you have too much storage, there's a different set of problems. You know, the idea that you have a lot of water sitting in a tank in your basement can cause the water to be compromised with algal growth or bacteria. If you know, so the idea that you have huge storage is not necessarily great either, but it's another tool in the toolbox to help mitigate some of these issues. That, you know, I've seen other projects that are, you know, in Shelter Island, for instance, in the center of the island, the aquifer is very, very thick, and there's a lot of access to fresh water. And a lot of these rules really don't make sense to be a burden on projects in that area. If you have 100-foot deep lens of fresh water to pick from, you know, restricting someone to 5 gallons per minute doesn't really make much sense there. But if you're living near the shore, we have a lot of low-lying communities, like in the Silver Beach area, if you're familiar with the Orient or the Ram Islands, where the freshwater lens, you know, is maybe 10 or 15 feet thick, and you're highly susceptible to saltwater intrusion, be it laterally or upconing. And that's a great opportunity for where the low flow really can make a difference.
I was actually thinking about inside and the existing home. And if I were to increase the size of the tank, double it, say, and increasing, re-strengthen whatever combination that it's gallon of water.
Oh, if it's not in the basement, yeah, you want to be mindful of that, yeah. And we actually look at the project. There's ways to calculate what your anticipated water demand is. New York Plumbing Code has guidance on counting up your fixtures and the type of house. Obviously, a 3-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms has a much lower instant water demand than a 9-bedroom house with 12 bathrooms. And so there's a bit of an engineering approach where you can help say, you know, 50 gallons might make more sense, or that, you know, this is a 200-gallon type storage situation. There's an analytical approach to it.
We ever run into this problem, from where we used to live, that when we went to even an odd, people were watering more, because they used to just take 1 or 2 days. Then they said, oh, you have to be even odd. So then you're watering more because your controller doesn't have a sub menu.
Yeah.
So you have a comment about that?
Yeah. So one piece of the legislation also includes a requirement for rain sensors to help reduce unnecessary watering when people's systems were just set to even and odd, but Tuesday it was raining, and so you were scheduled for Tuesday and it was raining, the system would still go off, be a total waste of water. So this legislation forces new systems to have those rain sensors. And these systems are progressing each year, getting more and more detailed with soil moisture readings that would help identify a day that doesn't require watering. But yeah, no legislation is perfect. And, you know, one of the actual problems in the drive for irrigation regulation was about managing the water infrastructure. That on a public water system, it's not built out here to handle everyone drawing water at the same time between 5 and 7 a.m. to water their lawns. And besides the I think common sense approach of trying to reduce everybody's watering of irrigation to be less wasteful of that, a big benefit of this and a big ask of Suffolk Water Authority specifically was we don't have the infrastructure to keep delivering all of this water. If you stagger it every other day, at least we're saying half the people will water on Monday and the other half put water on Tuesday, but this is partly a water management issue from the groundwater perspective, but the other part is water management from the delivery system, that they don't have the pumps and they don't have the distribution system to get all that water to people. Irrigate, just when I was a kid, growing up in Mattatuck in the 90s, on my street in Laurel, nobody had a pool and nobody had an irrigation system. I drive down my parents' street today, and every house but theirs has a pool and an irrigation system as like standard, standard part of their build. And so, just in my little sample size, I can see the water demand has exploded in their little neighborhood, and I think that's symptomatic of what we see across Southold town.
We abandoned the even some people just want to water it comes to eat, and supposedly if you water more, the roots go down.
Yeah.
But that was another neighborhood.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of nuance to this, and no legislation is ever going to be perfect, but the intentions behind this, I think, were good, and hopefully they can be refined with time to better suit people.
Let's get 2 more questions, and then we're gonna have to let these guys go. Chris?
I don't know long term. Water regulations have been in, going on so around. But how was the process of communicating this to the community? What is the authority under which they're applying? Like, how did you get everyone to say, or enough people to say, okay, we don't irrigate from our groundwater?
In Shelter Island?
Yeah.
It was a call from the community. It predates my time there, so I can't speak in detail to the to the nuance of it. But at the time, I understand it to have been a very popular request, and it didn't take very long to put together in terms of legislation. It was requested, and the political support was strong, and they executed this legislation. It's enforced through their building department, like other building codes, and I guess it's become part of the culture there. I really couldn't explain it any other way than that.
But ours will be through Southold town.
Yes. New code in Southold town.
Yeah.
For everyone.
No, I'm saying irrigating from groundwater.
Oh, are they not having any irrigation?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how this goes, the odd even, but, I agree.
George already told us how to go.
Well, everyone has to have sensors by 2028, everyone has smart goals on this. I mean, Suffolk County Water Authority says that 70% of the water use in the summertime goes to irrigation, which is crazy.
Residential irrigation.
Residential
Irrigation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hydrangea has hydra right in it.
Yeah.
They use a lot of water.
Warmer in the back.
I was kind of switching a little bit from irrigation, but I guess the question is for both of you. Going back to our water project and the aquifer, so close to ground here and how close we are, and then in the area near a river, how low the elevation is there, and they're very close to each other. So there's another project that's kind of going on where they're looking to bring additional water into Broadbent. So as a professional, would that be something where that interface between groundwater and your salt water would become a problem, where you're bringing additional water in to push against aquifer when it's already very, very close? 3 feet of water.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Right
Yeah.
in the water level.
Yeah.
In a
If
wetland
you have
area.
more salt water into an area, additional pressure of that salt in, could that have an effect on the aquifer in that area and as like wells surrounding that, as you're seeing influx of salt water?
I understand your question, but I don't know the details of the project
Something
specifically.
like sea level rise, which does increase
Yeah.
The potential for
for saltwater intrusion.
Yeah.
I mean, in the surrounding areas.
As part of the county's 2015 Comprehensive Water Resources Management Plan,
CDM Smith, same as your consultant, projected, I think, a 3-foot increase in sea level by the year 2100. So, that's a significant concern. I feel like we're, getting to the point where we're going to be on borrowed time. If that additional pressure is going to push additional chlorides inland, absolutely. Yeah, I have concerns about people's wells being impacted by chlorides, and we saw that after it was either Sandy or Irene, and I can't remember which non-community public water supplier it was, but I think it took 6 months for them to go from the tens of thousands of part per million chlorides down to below the drinking water standard of 250. And the DEC really, I think, launched it down like 50 or 100 part per million of chlorides.
This is the Narrow River Road program, trying to get rid of track lines. So
I'm not familiar with that project.
it goes to the way I would say, but not how much salt water you put into an area and then hold it so it can fill the fragmites. What does it do
Oh, I
to
see.
surrounding wells and water treatment aquifers? And are the two agencies that are, or the agency that's proposing it at odds with your agencies?
I'm not familiar with the project right now, honestly.
I think we're gonna have to save that discussion for afterwards.
There's a meeting Tuesday.
Yes, there is a meeting at 3:00, so Tuesday. Yes, I don't remember where the building, but on the town, Southhold Town Hall.
Good, thank you so much.
But, anyway, thank you both very much. And I just want to say, if there's a meeting of the Orient Association, it's going to be a beautiful day and you've got to sit inside. And these guys want to get out and be with their kids.
That's great. We're going to try to move through the rest of the meeting. This is the business side of the meeting. We'll talk a little bit about what Orient Association has been up to in the past year, give you a little bit of a quick overview of our budget, treasurer's report, introduce our board members. Benicia is going to present a slate of officers for the coming year, and we'll ask you to vote on them. And so without further ado, the first thing on our agenda is we published in our email to you earlier this week our minutes from the last meeting, which Nicole, our secretary, compiled them so dutifully. So I don't know how many of you had a chance to read through the minutes. They're pretty ordinary. We ask that you vote to approve them. If you have any objections, things that you saw that weren't there, speak up now. Otherwise, let's take a vote. Everybody in favor of approving minutes? Okay, I see by a show of hands it's relative. Anybody opposed? Okay, so by a show of hands, the minutes were approved with no opposition. I'll talk a little bit about what we've been up to for the past year. It was a big year. We released our water report, which was several years in the making. It's a fairly comprehensive study, 167 pages. For those of you who don't want to read all 167 pages, there's a nice set of fast facts, 10 key items from the water report that's on our website. If you haven't seen it already, I encourage you to go there. Daniel worked hard to produce all of these from our board, and we appreciate that. We held a follow-up forum in October on the water report to address three main issues: the forever chemicals in our fresh and other contaminants in fresh water, sea level rise, saltwater intrusion in Orient's wells, and a discussion of public water. Does Orient need it? And Along with that, we addressed the potential for a water pipeline from Suffolk County Water Authority into Southold and potentially into Orient. There was a large public forum for all of Southold about that, but also at our water forum in October, we did address that. And there's quite a bit of information on our website and also through Southold Town and Suffolk County Water Authority. The issue of public water coming to Orient is complex, and I know people have strong opinions about that, and that's great. Keep thinking about it. In collaboration with East Marion Civic Association, we brought Louise Harrison from Long Island, the Long Island, as a Long Island project manager for Save the Sound, to Pocatuck Hall to talk about what's been going on with Plum Island. This has been an ongoing issue. Plum Island is retiring its animal research facility, and everybody on the North Fork is concerned about what happens next with Plum Island, and Louise Harrison has just been great in keeping us all informed. This past May, we participated in the annual Southold Town Environmental Expo, and Barbara here set up a great table with info about PFAS in Orient and the rest of Southold, and she's brought some of those materials here. If you haven't had a chance to look at that table and some of the info there, highly recommend you go there. We've been trying to publicize a free well testing for PFAS contaminants for those in the study zones, which has grown considerably, as Jason talked about. And, you know, the more we know about who has PFAS in their wells and the more people who get signed up for remediation that's provided by the state and the county, the better off we all are. Nobody wants to be drinking PFAS. You saw a slide on the new irrigation code, which we've been trying to publicize, which helps in particular in Orient, but because we have such a shallow aquifer in so many areas, that we want to try to go easy on irrigation, choose plants that are not water hungry, and just try to be good stewards of our limited water. Orient, for a number of years, Orient Association has participated in what we call the North Fork Civic Coalition, which is leadership from the 8 civic organizations in Southold, representing each of the various civics and hamlets in Southold. And we've got 4 members of our board that are participating in weekly meetings, usually by Zoom, with the North Fork Civics. And what we try to do is find issues that we have in common that are of the common interest for Southold, and sometimes issues where we don't have in common, and we try to find middle grounds and ways that we can essentially integrate our various interests and be a unified force in Southold. One of the things that we've done over the past couple of years is try to bring in what I'll call a younger generation of board members. They're really the folks who are going to inherit Orient, and I'm happy that we have 4 members here whose children are in Orient schools or in the lower grader schools, and they bring a whole set of assets. So we have Aaron, who has older children, but has a really strong interest in what's going on in Broadmeadows, and I hope she'll continue to offer some leadership on Broadmeadows. And I know we have a conversation coming up about how to best accumulate that. Emily Miriam, Nicole, have all been really active. Nicole's our current secretary. They have children in schools. I know everybody knows Miriam and what she brings to the community. I'm really glad that we have a mix of our longtime older board members and a new generation of board members here. I really want to thank all of our board members who've just been fantastic this year, and us and our officers. It's just really been a pleasure and an honor to serve with them. I'm hanging up my presidential spurs later today, but I'm staying on the board and have a deep interest in all the issues that are going on in Orient. And of course, I am super grateful to all our Orient Association members who support us financially, but more importantly, whose voices drive our mission. And any of you who are in the audience who are not members, please consider joining. Thank you. Our treasurer, Drianne, can't be here today. It's her busy work season. Just want to quickly review our financial status, which is really good. Our revenue came in at about $4,200. Just a little bit of a water project donation, mostly general use donations. Our expenses, our office expenses, which really wind up being a variety of things, various publicity things, web stuff, supporting Zoom, our membership management software, and a bunch of things. We kept our D&O insurance, directors and officers, spent some money conducting meetings and forums. And last year, if you remember, we had an outstanding balance due to our water project consultant. And it was about $7,000. Their bill came in lower than we thought. So about $5,100 was their final bill. So our expenses look higher than revenue, but mostly that's because of an overhang from last year where we owed CDM Smith, our water project consultant, some monies. Our account balances are actually about the same as last year. We have about 10 grand in checking and about 10 grand in our savings account, and a little bit of cash that we hold for small expenses. Of those funds, about $4,900 is in our water project, which is we hold aside, and we haven't completely decided how to spend that, except we know we want to publicize our water project, so there will be some printing costs, and we may want to do some further research, and we'll keep you informed about what's going to go on with that. We don't have any outstanding liabilities, and so our unrestricted assets are 15,000, almost 900. So that's our quick treasurer's report. I thank Drianne for compiling these figures. She's our treasurer on her substitute today. Board members, we have 3 that are dropping off. Imogen's moved to England, and we wish her much success and hope she comes back. And Glennis and Dan are retiring from the board. The officers, these are our current officers, and we're going to have a slate of new officers coming up. But I want to thank everybody on the board. Everybody has just worked so hard, and a lot of it's behind the scenes that you don't see, but great board. And now, if Anisha's here somewhere, she's going to talk to you a little bit about our potential incoming officers. Oh, I hope it's tasty.
I do want to say thank you to Ms. Knight. him because he doesn't live here all year anymore, but he's done a great job. Thank you.
It was fun.
Helped by Jane.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. So my job has become very easy here because I tell you who the newsletter officers is. I'm delighted to say that the wonderful Miriam Foster has agreed to step up and be the new president. Thank you. And I saw her in the country store the other day, and she said, delegation. Excellent. And she's going to be helped and assisted at the officer level by the amazing Barbara Friedman here. Continuing as vice president, having been president for years. And then we have Nicole. Nicole is continuing to be secretary, right? Yes. Thank you. And Tony, have you disappeared, Tony? Oh, he's there. He's going to revert to being the brilliant treasurer he was before he stepped up. And I love what you were saying about new younger members here. And new younger members that because they're part of the school system and the parent-teacher association are very much engaged and involved with this community. And I can see that they are very interested in staying involved with Orient Association. So I'm so happy that we have this board and the members are there as well. Thank you. We have to have a vote. And there's a way of saying this that I never know. But let's just take a vote. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Did we do that? Yes, we've done it. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much, Venetia. I don't know, Miriam, do you want to? Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you. That's very sweet. This is an honor, obviously. And I will call on each and every one of you to help me out this year. I have the benefit that Tony didn't of being around. I'm very visible, very available until I'm not, and I'm happy to tell you when I'm not. And I will just say, I was recalled a little story the other day when we were all on our way to Bob Hamlin's memorial service. A bird flew into the country store. And I'm serious when I tell you this, it never left. It's still there somewhere. And I call on that spirit to help me serve you in his memory. Thank you.
So before we close out, there's certainly an opportunity for anybody here who has questions. I expected Dick to talk to us.
Morning, my name is Dick Leslie. I don't think I need.
Okay.
We need a microphone. Is this better? Yeah. I would like to talk with you a few minutes about the schools in our country, which are really the lifeblood of our society, our culture, and our nation. Education is our future. School boards are at the center of that educational structure. Our local school boards, in tandem with state instructional agencies, make policy decisions about which curriculum topics
will be taught in schools or excluded. School board members make up the majority of all elected officials in the United States. Over 22,000 seats are up for election on a regular basis. Our school board voter participation in this community is dismal. In our community, we have 880 registered voters. In the most recent election, 252 cast a ballot. That's 26% of our registered voters. There was, some of you probably know, there was a campaign to turn out voters in the most recent election. But in previous years, our record is a mere 16% of our citizens voted in school board elections. It is really the duty and responsibility of local civic groups, of which this is one, to change this dismal statistic. We need to increase the awareness of our citizens to the importance of our school. The first step is to provide a public forum for school board and candidates to present their views on education to the citizenry. So in accordance with Article 9, Section 3 of the bylaws, I would like to offer a resolution. Be it resolved that the Orient Association shall create a standing committee to annually conduct a candidate forum for candidates for the Oyster Pond School Board of Education to be held 2 Saturdays prior to the election. The association shall promote the forum through social media. The association shall also promote and encourage through social media registered voters to vote in Orient, to vote either in absentee or in person in the election. Any other comments or seconds?
I know in the past it's been done, right? What? In the past, we've had this for a long time.
Yeah, we discussed doing it this year, but I think some of the candidates are not interested in participating in a forum like that. I mean, but we did discuss it, and we are planning to have a forum about the school, hopefully this summer. I guess, you know, if you want to move to approve this resolution, I guess we should take a vote.
Maybe that's questions. One comment is, by virtue of posting it, so each candidate can decide whether they want to decide or not. It seems to me that they're hearing a certain amount, say something about their candidacy.
Yeah.
They must be absent, in which case they can explain their absence.
I mean, very often there's no opposition. There's a slate of candidates, and there's no opposition to any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second, so I just made. Second, please. I received your newsletter. It's a resolution proposed to social media, and I don't actually know if that needs to be included or should become an extra obligation.
Right. We don't exactly have social media. We have an email. We have email. We do have an Instagram account, I think, but we don't really use it.
I think that we shouldn't say social media on the sides.
Thank you.
Because I mean, Tony and I send out emails, and I almost always send out like every year. And also on our board, there are kids that work on this board.
Yeah.
So I mean, we try to follow that.
Well, let's change it to the public side.
Thank you. And then my third point is, this is a hopefully maybe propose it to see if we'll do it this year.
So this was I propose that there be a standing committee to specifically do this.
Right. I don't, that may be simply, organizing the hosting event, maybe an unusual obligation. It's a small board, and I don't know whether the capacity.
The bylaws permit that, resolutions that effect.
Yeah. I'm saying, like, I am.
We don't really have standing committees.
Well, the bylaws indicate that there are standing committees.
Right, but the standing committees are put together by the board, and given if the board can find members who would like to form that committee, I would certainly suggest that we do so. Just to sort of simplify Dick's proposal, I would suggest that we resolve to hold a forum at a reasonable date before each school board election and invite and encourage all candidates to participate in that forum, and that Orient Association publicize that forum through all its social media and print channels, whether it needs to be on a specific day. That's hard just because it's difficult sometimes to schedule these things, but I would like to, I think it's in the interest of.
I think our new.
Saturday prior to that, would seem like a logical time to have it, besides which, you need to schedule with the hall if you're gonna have such an event. But I do believe there needs to be a committee to do this and not delegated to an individual or.
And so I think for Orient Association, our procedure is for the board to convene such a committee, but we need to have board members who are interested in doing that. I believe, given our current board composition with 4 of our members who have children in schools, I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. But so our next meeting, we will endeavor to constitute such a committee.
Do they even have, like, how far in advance do people have to post to be? Yeah, it's to be a candidate for school board. It's not that far in advance of the election.
So that's 2 weeks prior.
Well, I'm not even sure that they know 2 weeks. Do you know? Oh, it is? Okay. Okay.
Here we go. Here we are, citizens of our community. We don't know when the election is. We don't know how many people run. So they nominate.
No, that's. I just know that it's not like a long period of time before him.
Like, get out of time.
Right, so it's about a month out from the election, so you know that you're a qualified candidate. Sorry, I hope everybody caught all of that. So about a month out, we would know who the candidates are, which means that 2 weeks, to have a 2-week turnaround. I mean, I think it's possible. We're kind of a small town. I don't know. Is there anything else I should say about this?
I just want to say that I think people should be able to see this in writing before they vote on it. I don't know.
But that's in violation of the bylaws of your association. I don't know why we can't vote on it.
Okay, I'm just trying to, okay. I think that what you're saying is totally fine. I think that, like, picking a Saturday 2 weeks before can be problematic because, like, here, for example, Miriam's on the board. She works on Saturday. People have kids. Like, can we be a little looser on that and be like, let's try to do it 2 weeks before. Maybe it's a Thursday night. You know what I mean? Like that's the only, I'm just saying, let's not hard and fast pick a date because that might be really difficult for the candidates to show up. But I agree with you.
It's sad when you logical day of meeting because that's when, here we are in June, and we really have a pretty pitiful representation of the community on Saturday mornings. On Thursday evening, I don't think you're gonna have to do this kind of occurrence, but without in terms of people coming here to candidate. But if that's your preference, that's.
No, I'm not saying when it should be. I'm just saying that the candidates need to be available. Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you that there should be a committee, and then we figure. I think that we should have a committee, agree to have a forum, like have a forum where the candidates speak, and that it should be at least 2 weeks before the election. And I think that we don't need to have the very, very, very specific things that it's going to be on a Saturday, it's going to be on this. Yeah.
Having a committee specifically to conduct a forum for school board candidates on an annual basis.
I think that is that fine? I think that's totally fine.
Can we vote on that as a resolution?
The potential candidate, it's not yet in the policy of the school to be included. I understand it will be an invitation based, but we should check because the school will then need to put in the candidate's packet this kind of information. We're not yet, as school board members, expected to attend something like this. I think that you need to involve the school in this before we resolve anything.
Consult the school about what?
Well, for instance, if somebody is interested in running for school board, they need to know that this is a very good chance that this will occur. This isn't yet in the policy for somebody to be running for school board.
Well, I think that's up to the school board.
I think maybe we need to liaise with them before we have this kind of expectation.
But I think the Orient Association and the school board and the school are different entities. And I think that we should have, as citizens, we should have such a forum. And I would imagine that most candidates would want to participate. And if some do not wish to participate, then they were at their own peril in terms of life.
Sure, as Scott says, the absence will speak as well as the presence. But I think that the school needs to be at least looped into this invitation. Sure, but in the candidate packet that Nicole just filled out, for instance, maybe that could be included. I mean, the school, it would be lovely for them to be on top of this as well before we make any resolution.
Another point of, I don't know, information is that it's not just Orient, it's also East Marion. So, I mean, we really should be including. Yes.
It's had here, but there has been an active East Marion association. We have had school board for, years in East Marion and in Orient.
Right. Well, we should coordinate with them and include them in whatever we do here.
Can you articulate what manageable would be a way to provide the allowances that articulated by the.
Well, I think he said it before, but I'm just adding that the East Marion Association should also be involved with this, and it'll. Yeah. Right.
Like, can we make a committee to raise awareness to the elections that are going on, like to the election, and then work out the details about the forum? And we could maybe put those in the bylaws next year, but like just agree today to make a committee, decide people to be on it, and then make sure that we raise awareness for our local elections. Okay.
And I nominate Dick to head that committee. All right. I think Erin has some business she would like.
I would volunteer to take lead on that committee. However, I'm not sure if there would be a conflict of interest as a board member. Since me, Miriam, and Nicole sit on the board, I don't believe we would be able to promote something like this and then also run it, because next year, but you might be soon. You don't know that, Evan.
Okay. Okay. We'll figure it out. So, is there any more business, any more discussion? I just want to remind everybody of the meeting on, when is it? Tuesday at 3. You want to talk about that briefly?
So the Broad Meadows project that was happening in 2019, that kind of got put on hold, or just, I thought, went away basically during COVID, has resurfaced. It resurfaced in October, on October 22nd, 2024. It was brought to town board to obtain funding, $238,000, to do a survey of Broadmeadows. So all previous summer of 2025, there was a McLean Associates was surveying Broadmeadow. They asked for access to our property, which we granted, just so they have access to the south side of Broadmeadows. They wanted to see elevations of our farm, elevations of the meadow. I even allowed them inside my house to take elevations of my home, elevations of the barns, because they were concerned with the height of our barns at this point, being only a foot above the mean high tide levels that they're trying to raise it to. At the end of this year, it was supposed to wrap up, that the results of the survey would be provided to us, as well as the engineering designs. At this point, I have not seen, or nobody, or an association, because I know we asked for maybe the proposal. The designs have not been seen, and they don't believe that the money is available at this point to proceed with the project, because costs have gone up about 3 times what they associated with. And they know at this point they need to raise Narrow River Road. It's too low. So at this point in time, without showing anybody in the community what the project will be, they are looking to obtain, and they is Ducks Unlimited, is looking to obtain a grant through Suffolk County to gain money to raise Narrow River and for the remainder of the process, Narrow River Road, and the remainder of the construction. I spoke on Monday to the town board in regards to the lack of transparency, how we are, what are we asking for? What is this money going to do? And if anybody on the board had actually seen the designs or the results of the survey. As of Monday, nobody on their board had seen any design plans or a survey or the results of the survey. At that point, the board agreed to table this letter that they would be writing in support until Tuesday. So now on Tuesday, they will once again be talking about, will the town board write a letter in support of Ducks Unlimited gaining Suffolk County funding, applying for a grant. Thank you.
Yeah, and the Orient Association also had a request from Ducks Unlimited to send a letter of support.
Right. And just to follow up on that, because late breaking news on some of that is Orient Association had asked Ducks Unlimited for a copy of their grant proposal. Last night I got what purported to be a grant proposal, didn't include any budgets or costs or any details on implementation. And so it wasn't much of a grant proposal. I asked them to come back with a real proposal. Yeah.
It's actually a 23-page proposal that requires what, like, down to the cent, where is this money going?
Right.
So, and that it's due on June 12th, so I assume at this point in time, they should have a very thorough proposal written,
right,
especially if the boards and all of our civic entities should be, or they're asking us to support them in some way.
It doesn't seem, I
Right.
hope that they have a proposal completed.
And one other just item in the letter accompanying this proposal that we received last night, they specifically excluded the raising of Narrow River Road.
Interesting. Maybe because they're expecting the town to do that on their own dime.
Maureen from Narrow River Road, Marina also spoke on that, on the same night, asking, how this would affect her business there. Because they do propose maybe just closing Narrow River as,
But that was one proposal, yeah.
all boat traffic to get to Narrow River would be coming.
Orchard.
Down Orchard Street.
Yep, and over versus, so how would that affect?
Yep. All right, unless there's further topics.
I just want to remind people also of the zoning update meeting that's happening on Thursday night. Because all of this, like you see where we all gathered and talked about the zoning update, they basically scrapped all that and starting over. So could be the meeting is really just about the process that they're proposing now, which is to do the zoning update in smaller segments rather than overhauling it all at once.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Daniel. Yes, seconded. We are adjourned.